two things that stood out for me were, how do I understand myself in this work, and how committed am I to understanding myself in this work? And to me, that's absolutely key. And then my third question would be, and how does this show up in my practice? Because we can spend endless times looking in the mirror and reflecting on ourselves, but we've got to relate. How do we notice how my understanding of because we all bring our whole selves to work every single day. And how am I understanding myself and how I show up in the workplace? But then how I understand myself and what's going on for me in terms of this work, how does that show up in my practice? How would I notice it showing up in ways that are useful and maybe not useful? And it's actually, how do I have conversations with people around me that I'm not taking care of this as well as I think I should be, and I need support to do that. And to that enabling process to say it's okay to have those conversations. And just when you were talking, Alyssa, the two things that stood out, that is iterative.
Yeah.
This whole process is iterative. You're not going to read it and digest it in one go, and you probably won't be bits that you're going to go, that's not for me, and it's not useful. But I also, when I'm trying to imagine these things, it's like going around the same mountain, and you're going around and you're ascending up, and every turn and every point offers you a point of view of it, and you go up and you see the same view several times as you're climbing. And the view, even though it's the same view, you're seeing it from a different vantage point. I think this is the same sort of thing, and you're not going to digest it. You're going to travel around it for a long time, and you're going to say, oh, domain threat, no, I'm going to worry about that. And then something will go down in your organisation, and you are opening that framework down. What was it saying about that again? Oh yeah, okay, I need to pay attention to that. And then even that, you'll do it again 3 years later, and it'll be different and real in a different way. And the other thing about everything's like domain 5 is in everything. That's life. Like you try to pull one thing out, and it's connected to everything else. And I think that's a really good observation. I didn't actually when I was reading through and having discussions. That's really true. That domain 5, that self-care and how we show up for each other, it's in every single one of those domains. And everything, probably you can say that about a couple of the other domains too. That when you don't try to pull it, try to read it as a whole, I think. And if you need to dip deep into something, then deep in, but everything is connected to everything else in that framework.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rosie.
Yeah, just thinking about that a little bit more, Rosie, I think the other question that I think about is as practitioners we're, being across how we're showing up, but then as leaders we need to look at how are we creating opportunities in our organisations to reflect. At what pace does that reflection look like? What structure is there in place? I think there's a difference between thinking on the run and sometimes we actually a lot of times we have to do that in our work, but sometimes the deeper reflection around practice comes from stillness, and it comes from structured time, and that is challenging in our work. And so it is identifying where is the opportunity for that with our teams. Obviously, if you have supervision, then that's one of those spaces. But there is real value in being able to do that collectively as a team at times also, and share that reflective experience, I think, because we learn so much from one another in that space. The other thing I wanted to just talk about was something that Alyssa said around knowing when you can't show up. And I think that is just so incredible. There is a realness that we absolutely have to embrace in this work. We have to be able to say when it's tough, and our cultures have to support us in that. So, and I think that requires real willingness. There's a vulnerability to looking at your culture, to your organisational culture. There's a real vulnerability in looking at your practice, and there has to be a willingness to step into that space and know that your self-worth is not 1,000% attached to the way you show up at work, that there is some space between your professional identity and your self-esteem and self-worth. And I think when we learn that, we can move into that vulnerability a little bit more easy to examine our practice and our culture a little bit more willingly.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I agree. I haven't got long, and I'm scared that I might get in. So I guess just I think that that's a really important point, and even just thinking about pace and time. Time is in my mind for a great many reasons at the moment, but I almost feel like, we feel like we can't slow down, and some of that I think is real, and some of that is the way we've worked for so long. I'm not sure we know how to do it now. We just constantly work at a pace that's completely unsustainable and unhealthy, and we keep doing it. And I think it's very hard to be reflective when you are exhausted. So, it's like there's this double-edged sword, this constant kind of focus on reflective practice and being centered, and very difficult to do when you can't even, think about what you're going to do beyond breakfast, other than, get to work and get into the load of things. So I think thinking about time in terms of your culture is something that's a really interesting thing for us all, all to do. I guess the only other comment I wanted to make about the capability framework is we've talked about individual and managers, but I think there is also something about, kind of uniting as a sector and shared language and raising the profile, in actual fact, of the capabilities and skills that sit within this work. So I think that there is an advocacy, potential to think about down the track around the workforce capability and how that might articulate pieces of advocacy or positions that the sector might want to take. So it's just a slightly different lens I just wanted to mention.